80 plus hours a week to 25 minutes of auditing some work, and it still gives me the benefit of making our systems work better. It's pretty good. It almost feels like too much, and I worry for you guys, but I appreciate it on the customer side. We only have Nexus out of all 50 states. I think we only have Nexus in about 9 or 12. See, I can't even remember because you guys do all this work for me now. Our business is actually a bit complex as we have two businesses under one roof. So we have an interior design studio, a firm, as well as a furniture business that is direct to consumer online only. So it's a little bit complex in that fashion that it's two and not just one. And the customers that we reach out to are vastly different. So the studio is a very wholesale, quiet, high-end consumer that we interact with directly. And that's on the studio design side. And then the furniture side is just sales to people who are buying furniture. We don't really know them, but we do our best to have great customer service. So those are the two business facets that we deal with. For both businesses, our customers are everywhere, all over the place. I don't know if we have many international clients, but they're definitely in almost every single state with both of the businesses taken into account.
Once you have customers across multiple states, I think that's a good problem to have, in my opinion, because like on one side, the business is growing across geographies, across states, but I guess on the other side, you will increasingly have tax compliance requirements across multiple states, right? So if we just take a step back, like, before you started using Galvix, like how were like you managing sales tax for both these businesses? If you could kind of paint a picture of the biggest headaches or any frustrations that you were having with the previous way.
So now the fact that we sell in so many different states and you reach Nexus in them, that presents a whole other problem. And then when I took it over, it was me, and it was very manual. To answer your question, it just became a giant headache for me. And so it was hours and hours and hours of work. Even so, it was just me downloading 2 different reports from 2 different places, trying to audit it and making sure the data was right. And then manually going into every single state. I think we only have Nexus out of all 50 states. I think we only have Nexus in about 9 or 12. See, I can't even remember because you guys do all this work for me now. But let's say 9. And so for every single one, I have to log in and do all of that stuff that I would do for just California and do it for 9 different states. The rules are completely different for every single state. So I would have to familiarize myself with what the sales tax rules were for that particular state. And it goes down to by county, by city, by parish, depending on the state, depending on the location, depending on the geography. Where did we sell? How did we sell it? The tax might be different for every single one. How you file it with the state, and those rules are completely different. It's one problem after another. And when I say it would take hours, it would take so much time. It was a full-time job for one person, and I'm one person that's the financial controller for my entire 2 businesses. I have a bunch of other things to do, so it was a lot of work. I would say, if I had to break it down, it was a 40-hour week job, or at the very least, for 2 weeks out of the month. So that's a lot of time. And you didn't ask this question, but the number one solution that kept on coming up is Avalara. Am I getting that right? And their solution was way too complex. One, way too expensive, just extremely expensive. But also they needed to latch on and tag onto your system in such a way that it needed to verify every single transaction, and based off of that transaction, it would go into your system, back into it, then back out of it. I can't remember exactly how it works, but it was too complex, too much work. Then you had to verify it and audit it all the time. And from what I heard from other users, it was always breaking, and you always had to fix the connection, and it never seemed to be correct. And then it just cost a ton of money, and you had to go with their plan, and you had to be in their plan, locked into their plan, for at least a year or something like that. Anyway, the time to do everything was a lot, and the solutions seemed few and far between, and it seemed like they actually were not going to work.
How did you come across Galvix? Like, did somebody tell you about it, or how did you discover it? Just curious.
Again, it was before I understood how to use AI completely, so I just kept on Googling, and then Reddit became my best friend. I kept on finding you guys on Reddit, and that was very helpful because there was quite a few people that had concise and good things to say. So it wasn't this convoluted message about, Galvix does this, and this is why it helps. It very clearly said Galvix was a really good solution that's actually helped do this, and here's why. And it was always very concise and very direct to the point. And I think at the end of most of the Reddit's posting, it would say, contact them directly. And I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds like a great idea. And that's kind of how I found you guys.
I'm sure like when you came across Galvix, there would probably have been some apprehensions or like any worries or any hesitations, I would say, about potentially using Galvix. Like, do you recall any of them, like as you were evaluating or comparing Galvix with any of the other solutions available?
Yeah, it just, to be honest, it seemed too easy. So that was the main reservation. My main reservation was just that maybe the solution doesn't understand exactly what I'm trying to do because it seemed too straightforward and too easy. And it was interesting because it almost seemed like necessary to get on a call with you, Piyush, in order to understand how you were doing it. And I remember our call lasted less than 10 minutes because it was straightforward and easy. So it's funny that you guys are so straightforward and simple, but a robust tool that actually does everything, that it almost seems like it shouldn't be the solution that you go with. Does that make sense?
Well, I think I'm just thinking, is that a compliment or something we should worry about? Because I mean, you're right that we have consciously tried to keep it extremely simple for our users, although a lot of complexities behind the curtains, behind the scenes. But I think, like everyone in our team, we just love to keep things very simple, and we work a lot extra hard to keep, like, to reduce the number of options which are available. But thanks a lot for your encouraging words. Like, that means a lot. Even though you had some of these apprehensions, that one thing really kind of, made it clear that, okay, I think it's worth trying it out.
Yeah, it actually was the customer service piece. I remember with that other customer of yours that I was on the phone with, I remember he said, Ismail, he said, even if something goes wrong, I'm able to go ahead and call Piyush directly, or I can send an email to customer service. And he said, they get back to me, if not within a few hours, at least within 12 to 24 hours. And he said, so if I have a question, it gets answered, and it gets answered very pointedly. So exactly what the error was that I have, or the question that I have, it gets answered directly. And I think he said he had used Avalara before. And he said with Avalara, he said, I don't know if the customer service is going to get back to me on time. Regardless of any question that he had, you guys had a fantastic answer for them and a very quick one. To me, that was a huge, huge difference. At least I could feel very supported. Even if I decided to just jump in, try it for this 1 month to see if it worked, that made me feel very good about the fact that if when I was auditing your work or Galvix's work, I could feel secure that if I had any question of what was wrong or why it was wrong, you would absolutely go through every single one of the paces, do all the work that was necessary in order to just give me an answer to a simple or difficult question. I thought that was amazing.
Ironically, sales tax is a complicated topic, and even though while we may try our best to automate everything, I think there will be times when there will be questions and our customers will need clarifications. And ironically, there are no easy answers. Like, most of the times, as you would have seen, like it requires a little bit of digging into the data and kind of, really going back to out of 1,000 transactions, like getting to that one transaction which might be causing a problem. So it is definitely some effort, but I think like when you say those words, like when you find it useful, it really kind of encourages us to continue doing that.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I was like, oh, okay. I talked to one of the customers. I've talked to Piyush directly. This is fantastic. I can't wait to use the system. Never will have to use our customer service to talk to them again. That's how good I felt about jumping on with you guys. And then you're right, issues come up because sales tax is very, very complicated, and I knew that. But you put on a tool or a software system, and you're like, this, I found the solution. Never gonna have to touch this again. This is great. And that's how I initially felt. And it was funny when our first issue came up. I said, oh, great. And then had to reach out to you guys, and I was like, oof, let's see when they'll get back to me. It's not a pressing issue, but hopefully it'll be within a week's time, within 2 weeks' time, before the 20th of the month comes around, when the due date of this specific sales tax has to happen. And no, it was great. You got back to me right away. And then you said, in fact, you got back to me right away and said, we're researching this. We're going to look at these 3 different things. We'll get back to you with an answer soon. And I was like, geez, okay, this is great to begin with. And then you got me an answer, and then you fix it, and then you file it. And then we were done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally recall it, and I think that is definitely. I mean, I would say the most fun part for our team, and it's also challenging for us to scale that at times because we need to make sure that everyone in our team can kind of roll up their sleeves. We don't want to provide you an automated response just saying that yes, here is your ticket number, and we'll get back to you in 24 hours. But rather, we want to make sure that even the first response is meaningful, and like you do see that somebody's looking at it, and that someone understands the software and the domain both, actually, right? So it is challenging, but I'm very excited to know that you found it helpful.
Yeah, no, it's great. It almost feels like too much, and I worry for you guys, but I appreciate it on the customer side. we did something wrong in our system. You identify it for us. We change it because oftentimes it's something that's going on with our system, which is the other thing I should probably mention is that anytime that I've seen a difference or something that has to be changed, it usually is not on the Galvix side. And most of the time it's on our side, which is great because it's identifying something that in the future won't happen anymore in our system, but that was a bug in our system. So it just saves a lot of time and it helps our functionality of our work get better on our side too. So it helps on both sides. But again, like you were saying, 80 plus hours a week to 25 minutes of auditing some work, and it still gives me the benefit of making our systems work better. It's pretty good.
What would be a rough estimate of how much time you spend now? Like, I think the number of states is kind of more or less similar, but what would be a rough estimate for the time that you spend every month in kind of, taking care of the sales tax part?
Probably about 25 minutes.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
That's a big difference. Yeah. I mean, talking about 60 or 80 hours down to 25 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy to say it out loud, and it's accurate. I mean, what I do is I verify the data. I do my due diligence, but instead of downloading data for 9 different states and then having to go through the rigmarole of, okay, what are the rules for this state? And now I have to create a tax spreadsheet that's specific to this to make sure I get the taxes right for the specific parish, make sure I break it down from that. Shoot, this doesn't break it down by city. Okay, I have to figure that out, figure out the specific transaction of why that might not be working. All of that work. Instead, all I'm doing is gathering the information down from Galvix, downloading that onto a spreadsheet, getting my tax data from my 2 different software systems, getting that data, putting it on there, seeing if there's any differences there, and then I verify it, and then I go on to Galvix and I just go approve. This one I have a question, send a question, which I do send a question to you guys, maybe every other month or something like that, and then that's it, and then I get an answer back, and I go, oh, okay, that's why, or we did something wrong in our system. You identify it for it.
Fast forward, like now that you've been using Galvix for almost a year, I would say, right? So if you were to say that, like, what is that one most significant thing that really has become much easier for you, like, after you started using Galvix?
Everything. It's just the relief of time. Because as we were talking about before, it was hours and hours and hours. So that's the absolute best and easiest. It's the one thing that I can just let go of and know that it's going to be taken care of. And then all I have to do is all of my other accounting work and all of my other financial controller stuff, but it makes it so much easier. What's coming to mind right now is, in California and in New York, there was and maybe Utah, there was a few instances, and they were all kind of isolated instances to just one of those states in the last few months where, something was off, but I didn't know what was off. I just knew that there was a difference between what Galvix said we should remit and what I saw in the 2 different softwares. I added those 2 numbers together, and it wasn't the same number. So there was a delta. There was a difference there. And then very easily for me, just identified that number, sent it to Galvix customer service, and I said, almost kind of as a terrible customer, almost saying, hey, there's a difference here. Please figure it out. End of story. And then I hear back from you guys and you say, yeah, it's great. We'll figure it out. Can you tell us what you're looking at? And I'd be like, oh, sorry. Yes. Here's the number that I identified. And why is that number there? Here's the other number that I identified. This is why I see a difference. Here you go. And then you'd reply and you'd say, got it. Now that we understand, we're going to go look. And then you'd come back and you'd tell me, hey, so we looked at everything and we identified there's 3 actual invoices. Here's what's going on. In one particular instance, it was that there was a customer that was in New York, but it was identified as a California sale, and it should have been a New York sale, and things needed to be changed. And again, that was a problem on our side, not on the Galvix side. But Galvix was quickly able to identify for us what our problem was. We searched it on our side, and then when I received the customer service email from you guys, it just basically said, hey, when you fix it on your side, and you were very kind about it, sorry about that. And I was like, sorry, it was our fault. And then you basically very easily said, change it on your side, let us know when it's done. Galvix will rerun the numbers, and then we can have you take a look at it again, and then we'll remit that. And we did that. You reran the numbers. I re-audited the data. The numbers looked like they matched. It was no more delta, no more difference. And then I gave the go ahead, and the sales tax were filed. And those emails back and forth may have taken 1 or 2 days, but the time of it, of what we what I, on my side, at the time that I had to take on that was 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Wasn't long.
Do you think Galvix has impacted your overall confidence in the tax compliance or the sales tax compliance of the
Yeah,
business? Like, do you feel more secure now?
yeah, very much agree with that. The fact that yeah, when I was filing sales tax, let's say for Florida is a pretty complex one that I can think of. What was another one? So you've been doing it for me so long that I don't have to remember these things anymore. But there were a few where I would file the sales tax and I would think to myself, okay, that one's done, and I have no idea if it was done correctly. And I would just be waiting and hoping that I wouldn't have to have a response from that specific sales tax entity or that government entity, and hear that they audited and hear that we remitted incorrectly and I had to pay more, or they had to give me some sort of uh, a refund, and I had to figure out how to get that refund. And maybe it's difficult to get that refund, but that would happen in the 9 states. I would say that for maybe half or more than half, I wasn't sure that I was remitting those sales tax correctly. And I was pretty positive that the previous sales tax preparers for our company, I wasn't sure if they were doing it accurately either, because when I tried to audit and rework and redo what they were doing, I couldn't figure out how to do that. So very much more secure that you guys are doing it absolutely accurately. Yeah, I'd say two things. One, I would say that I did a lot of research, and I actually talked to at least 3 other sales tax remitting companies, and none of them came close to what Galvix was going to do for us, which is strangely why I was hesitant to even try Galvix at first, which is why we got on a call with you and me, and why you set me up with a customer, and then I understood, oh, okay, this is the way it works. I feel better about it and no hesitation now, and let me try it. But number two, with regards to this specific question, the other solutions, Avalara was just too complicated. And thinking that they were robust, and just actually a really terrible, not all their solution, it seemed like. And then you only get to talk to salespeople. So they didn't know the functionality of their software. They just understood the functionality of their software, if that makes any sense, but it didn't seem clear. And then a couple other ones seemed like they could work, but really they seemed like they were on the cusp of figuring the solution that Galvix already. For the other one, it just seems like it was going to save time. It was going to be easy to audit. So when I spoke to your customer, we could chat about the specific and how he dealt with Galvix. Those were the 2 things that absolutely sold me on the Galvix solution. Really, it was mostly just that the other solutions seemed so far away from what you were doing that it seemed like this was the way to go. There was one other one that seemed like they were doing what you were doing, but almost they were not quite there yet, and Galvix was already there.
This has been extremely helpful, Ismail. I really sincerely appreciate the time. I know this is busy time, like you have so many things going on, but you took this time to help us with this. So deeply appreciate this.
No, thank you, Piyush. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a busy week, but no, you've been so helpful to me personally and for the business that I was happy to do it.